Today we're going to be talking about front desk departments. Now, right after housekeeping, the second most important department is your front desk department. Now, our goal in this video is to see how we can structure our front desk department. Number one, not need us, and number two, deliver consistent results every single time, irrespective of who's working. Now, for you to have a successful or a flourishing front desk department, there's five components to building a very structural front desk department. And if any of this is broken, what it leads to is having inconsistency in your department. Uh, your staffs would not know how to handle complaints. You would create super dependence on either your managers or yourself, who's a hotel owner. And then also it can lead to reduction in the amount of revenue you can possibly generate. Now, what are these five components of a front desk department? Now, the five components of a front desk is number one, service standards. Basically, these are the rules for your guest experience. Two is your scripts and prompts, and these are the exact words your staff say whenever they encounter a guest. Three, training. How does your team learn to internalize your standards? Four, accountability. How do you ensure consistency with your team where you don't have to step in and micromanage your staff? Five is your KPI tracker. Basically, these are the numbers that you pay attention to know whether your systems are working. So let's get into it. The first component of your front desk is your service standard. You need to set a standard for the kind of service and experience you want to deliver to every single one of your customers. Now, the first standard you want to set is the greetings. Now, the first 10 seconds in which a guest approaches your front desk department is very important. So you need to map that whole entire process out, meaning that you want to tell them when they should start making eye contact, the kind of opening line they should say, and how to build rapport with the guest. The next standard you want to create is the check-in flow. And the purpose for this is to create consistency in the way they check in a guest. The reason for this is so that you have structure, right? And sometimes they might forget certain information to pass across to the customer, which is why you want to have a sequence. And that could look like having the greetings first, then verifying the ID of the guest, verifying the reservations to make sure it's the correct thing, providing any special offers, giving any hotel information that's important to the customer, and then your key handoffs that have a closing line. So that's what a typical check-in flow could look like. The third one is upsell. Now, a lot of front desk staffs hate sales for a few number of reasons. The reason could be that they don't know exactly what to say, or two, they might feel sleazy by just whenever they hear the word sales. So what you want to do is provide the exact script that your front desk staff need to use, so therefore they know exactly what to say. And secondly, you need to change their mindset about sales. Sales is simply making contextual offers. So take, for example, if I approach your hotel and you see I'm coming with a family, if you offered me a larger room at a decent price, right, additional to what I paid, that is not you being annoying. It's you anticipating my needs simply before I did. So if you offer me that, that is great service. So that's what you need to explain to your front desk team. Now, the next one is handling complaints. A lot of staffs are inadequately trained or feel very uncomfortable when they have to deal with a guest who is upset. Now, there's a very simple way in which to handle this, and it's called the last method. This is the method used by Marriott, Hilton, and the likes of such, right? It's a simple thing that you can use and implement in your hotel. Now, last method simply stands for L, listen, meaning whenever a guest is upset and making a complaint, you want to make sure that you don't interrupt them. You allow them to finish their whole entire thoughts. So you have to remember to not get defensive whenever you listen, right? Because a lot of staff tend to do so. Two is you want to acknowledge, basically that's what A stands for. This is where you want to show understanding. You want to have sentences like, yeah, I completely understand how you feel. That should never have happened. So you're acknowledging their pain. The next thing you want to do is solve. You want to offer a solution, right? This is not where you come up with an excuse. No, you find out a solution that you can actually deliver on right there on the spot. T is thank. You want to thank them for bringing up the situation for you to be able to have the opportunity to resolve that problem. Because if you can resolve it all here, there's no need to escalate it, or there's no reason for them to go leave negative reviews on your website. So, which is why your front desk is very important, right? Because at the end of the day, with this whole method, you want to make sure your guests feel heard, make sure the problem is solved, and you want to make sure it ends very positively. The fifth one is phone answering, right? Basically, you want to have a standard for how your staff answer phone calls. Meaning after 3 rings, they should be answering. You want to set that standard and the exact greetings, how to put a guest on hold politely, and how to end the call. And all of this should be handled professionally. So now what we have covered is service standards, which is basically all we've just done here. And what we've also covered as well is the script and prompts, basically providing the staff the exact words that they should say whenever they're either upselling or checking in a guest. That's very important. So next we're going to move is training. Basically, how do you make sure you teach your staff your standards so that they internalize the standards? So let's move to that. So we're going to the third component, which is basically training. And basically, how do we make sure that our staffs internalize our standards? Now, there's no point in having and building all those standards and your staffs don't know how to actually implement those standards, which is why your training is very important. And most hotel owners poorly train their staffs. They typically just show them the system and just have them shadow some random person and hope everything goes well. That's hoping, and that's not how to train. If you want to train your staffs properly, you want to use the performance replication method. This is how you train staffs. So, what does it entail? So, step number one, you want to clarify, meaning that if it's not written, it does not exist. You must clearly write out the standards. Now, what are you writing now? You're writing down your check-in script, your greeting standard script, your complaint protocol, your upsell language. You write down all of this so that staffs can follow the standards. Staffs can't follow a standard that lives in your head alone. It needs to be visible for them to actually see what the standards look like, which is why you make sure you write them down. Step one is very important. Step number two is you demonstrate. Now, you show them how to accomplish the standards, not just telling them. You want them to see what success in that particular role looks like. So this is where you can either have training videos that they could watch, or they could watch you actually in action, delivering those standards. The third thing you want to do is you want to rehearse, meaning that you want to make sure they practice correctly and then you are there inspecting what they're doing. Now, this is where you could either role play with them. Basically, you can role play a situation where they're dealing with an angry guest, you're dealing with a confused tourist, or having a upsell conversation. Now, a lot of hotel owners skip this part. But if you do this, you're basically leaving the staff to go on the floor and figure it out themselves. And basically, they're going to use your business as a test ground to make mistakes. And that could lead to a lot of issues down the line. So you want to make sure that you role play with your staffs so that they are better prepared when they are on the floor. Step four is you want to reinforce. Training is not a one-day thing. It's a continuous thing. The reason for this is because you want to avoid law of entropy, because if you leave things to its natural state, it tends towards decay. So what you want to do is on the first week, you want to give daily feedback on what they're doing. So this is the point where you're staying close to them and you're monitoring their every single move and giving them feedback on what they do. Then you move to weekly. And what does that mean is you're checking in on them on a weekly basis after the first week to make sure that they are keeping to the standard. Now, that's what reinforcing standards look like, because you want to keep your standards sharp. So you need to understand that, yes, this takes time in training stats, but it pays off in the long run. It saves you so much time because you end up creating independent stats who can operate without you. Step number 5 is verify. Now, this is where you begin to watch your team in action. And then this is where you look for clues that tells you when your standards are beginning to slip. So this is when you're looking at your reviews and looking at for the trend in what your customers are saying about your front desk department. So this is how you train your staffs to make sure that they maintain standards and make sure they keep on delivering consistency. Next, we're going to move into accountability, basically how you ensure consistency without having to micromanage your staffs. The fourth component is accountability. Now, you can't stand at front desk 24/7 and monitor every single thing in your department, right? You want to create a system that creates accountability without you having to micromanage your team. Now, how do you do this? The first thing you do is by creating the handover log. Now, this is important because it's how your team communicates to each other whenever there's something that they can't fulfill within their entire shift. So, for example, shift A couldn't fulfill a particular request for a guest, they pass that information to shift B. That's what the handover log is. Basically, things that it could be in it could be things like guest requests, room issues, special VIPs, or special promises made to a particular guest. Now, these are information that you want to include in the handover log that they pass on to every shift. Two is weekly spot check. Now, this is where you observe the standard and make sure that your standards are being adhered to. So, meaning you have spot checks where you observe what your teams are doing, listening to how they're checking in the guests, and then monitor if they're following the right standards or not. And then the reason for this is that when staffs know that the quality is being measured, they would deliver quality every single time. The third thing is reviews. Now, you want to watch reviews for trends and patterns so that you can use the opportunity to train your staffs. If it's your phone calls, you want to make sure that you're reviewing the phone calls that have been had with guests. You can listen in to pick one or two and listen in and see if your teams are adhering to standards, right? And also, the point of this is not to create a gotcha moment. No, it's for you to use that moment as an opportunity to remind your staffs about the standard, meaning that you can go back and use it as a learning moment to train your team, right? So this is how you create accountability without having to micromanage every single person on your team. Now, we're going to move to KPI tracking. So the fifth component is your KPI tracker. Now, this basically tells you if the system is working before the problem actually becomes obvious. So now these are the key numbers or key things you want to watch out for. And these are your signals to let you know what to focus on or if there's going to be a problem down the line. So the first thing you want to track is your upsell rate, meaning how many offers were presented to guests versus how many was actually accepted. Now, if nobody's accepting the offers, now this signals to you that your script is wrong. Your upsell script is wrong. So you need to go back and work on that. Now, if nobody's making any offer, then this tells you that the training is broken. So you go back and retrain your staffs properly on upselling. Now, the second thing is you want to look at the complaints resolution. How long does it take for them to resolve a particular guest complaint? Now, if it's taking way too long, now this signals to you that your staffs are not empowered enough. So you need to go back and review why they don't feel empowered or why they might not be empowered to solve the problem right there and there. It could be having access to particular things or giving them permission to do certain things when you're not in the picture. The third thing is your reviews and mentions. So now you want to count how many positive staff reviews that you get, and you want to watch the trend. You want to look out for those trends, if it's increasing or if it's decreasing, and use those moments as a teachable and training moment for your team. So after we built all the system, what exactly have we been able to achieve? Now, what we've been able to build is that number one, your upsell revenue increases because your staff now know exactly what to sell because you've given them the script. Number two is that our complaints is going to decrease because our staff are now confident in how to handle upset guests or guest issues. Number three is that our reviews are going to improve because our staff now deliver consistent results or consistent service every single time, right? And number four is that our staff becomes confident because they no longer have to guess the standards. And number five, you stop being the bottleneck because the system carries it all. And then number six, your front desk becomes an asset and no longer a headache.